additional statement, unnecessary statement should not write. For example, IO exception. If you remember reading runtime values chapter, in that chapter I told buffer reader, when I call readline method, it is forcing us to report what IO exception. We have seen we never get exception, IO exception in our reading runtime values chapter. But still, IO exception we must handle because IO exception is a checked exception. IO exception was created as a checked exception, so we are forced to handle. Then, as a beginner, if you force me to handle that IO exception, I feel so irritated, unnecessary. Now, if there in the scanner class, that problem is solved. In scanner class, they have taken input mismatch exception as what unchecked exception. Then am I forced to handle that exception? No. If I want, I will handle, otherwise he'll ignore. So I'm guaranteeing always I'll get a correct value from the end user. I don't get wrong values. Then handling exception is what? Optional. Maybe there is a chance, I got a doubt. Then you write yourself try catch. As a user programmer, you write a try catch by your own. So there are some exception must be optional to handle. There are some exception must be mandatory to handle. So the exceptions which we are throwing from our method must not catch by the same programmer. Those exceptions should catch by caller programmer. If you want inform to the caller programmer, use throws. If not required, don't write throws keyword. Understand? So where I should use throw and throws keyword. If you are developing a method logic to execute by taking values from other programmer, in this method logic, we must use a throw and throws for throwing and reporting an exception if wrong values are passed. If you want to just suppress the exception, continue next lines of the code execution. Or if you develop end user interacting logic for reading input and displaying output, in that method we must use try catch. So in the short form, in business logic development or in reusable logic development, we must throw exception and report exception by using throw and throws. For just suppressing exception or in end user interacting logic development, we must use what? Try catch. That means simple term, wherever you are throwing exception, there don't write try catch. The program where you are calling other methods, there you write what? Try catch. Got clarity? Huh? Right. At this point, when to use throw and throws, when to use try catch. Simple ones, two statements you write. Okay. For throwing, from a business logic, for throwing and reporting exception, from a business logic for throwing and reporting an exception, for throwing and reporting exception, we must use throw and throws. We must use throw and throws. Next. For catching exception, wait. In user logic, for catching exception, we must use in user logic for catching exception, we must use what? A try catch. Done. So these are all the points related to throw and throws keywords. And tell me, reporting a checked exception by using throws keyword is mandatory. Reporting an unchecked exception by using throws keyword is optional. Okay, I want you to develop one small project to show all these points. Write down. Develop a project to show the use of throw and throws keywords to show the user, throw and throws keywords. Throw and throws keywords, comma, try and catch. Throw and throws, comma, try and catch. Right on this project on throw, throws, try, catch. You can understand it by your own, no need to help. Convert to which type you don't want to convert, pass that value to parse method. Parse method will throw number format exception if unable to convert. You read integer from you read number from the keyboard. Pass it to parseInt method. If parseInt method doesn't throw exception, that means you pass in. There you write a logic. System.out.println, don't enter integer. Not possible. That's what I'm saying. You have to read that number by using next line. Next line returning it as what? String. Then next line, in the next statement, you write integer dot parseInt of that number or the text. If parseInt method has a thrown exception, that is not integer. What I'm saying, you don't listen. Whatever you want, only will ask. If the parseInt method doesn't throw exception, that means what you pass? Integer. Okay, what do you want? You want integer or string? Only string should pass, right? Integer should not be there. Then what to do? Down, you write if parseInt method doesn't throw exception, that means your data came or wrong data came? Wrong data. Then down you write system.out.println, pass only string. If exception came, control will go to where? Catch block. Okay, na? Control will go to catch block. Just write empty catch block. Down logic as it is, you follow. There is no option to verify the data has other than number and string. Clear? You have to use parse int method or the respective parse methods only you have to use. There is no direct if condition or operator. This text contain other than characters. So you have to use parse methods. Parse method will throw number format exception. If it is a AWT swing, you have direct logic. Okay, direct one method will be there. So in the text boxes you enter data, na? The text boxes you can block. If other than characters entering, you can keyboard will be blocked. Keyboard characters will not be typed. Only text, I mean, other than digits, if you type, then only it is allowed. So that way, the logic is there in HTML and AWT swing, GUI applications. In CUI, we don't have any that kind of facility. You have to go through that your additional logic. Completed a main method. What is TTSTC? Throw, throws, try catch. Better let me take this T capital. Throw, throws, try catch. And there is not terms and condition TC. Close main method, close class. And tell me, this is business logic or user logic? In user logic, we have to write what? Try catch. Right on that side of main method, user logic. Here you write user logic. So here we use try catch to catch exception. Done, completed. Now business logic. In business logic, what should I use? Throw, throws. Throws keyword must be there with method declaration. Tell me, here throws keyword mandatory or optional? Mandatory or optional? Optional. Completed? So tell me the flow of execution of this program. When you run this program, first control come to main start message, scanner object created connected to keyboard, then try, enter first name message displayed, FNO variable created, reading, next in method. If you enter integer, no problem. If you enter some text or something, here what exception rise? Input mismatch exception. Control come here, display message, please enter, please pass only integer. Control 1. Enter first number I am giving A. Pass only integer. Program execution terminated abnormally or normally? Normally. That's why written main start and main end. Okay. Now assume that I am passing correct number. Then store that number inside FNO. Enter second number. Then tell me if I give wrong number, then what happened? Again input mismatch exception rise. Please enter only integer. I'm giving 10 here, A here. Please pass only integer. Program execution terminated normal. Tell me. Next, assume that here also I gave correct number. Then both numbers are going to add method. From here, control is going to addition class, add method. A variable store first number, B variable store second number. Then now if A less than 0, negative, true, true or anything is what? True. Then we got illegal argument exception. Let us try now. I'm giving -10, 20 or what I call 20. Okay. Then press enter. We got error. Don't pass negative number. Tell me. We have thrown exception from main method, add method. That exception is propagated to main method. This add method replaced with exception and passed to matching catch block and display e dot get message. Get message is reading the message there inside exception object and displayed on console. Hope you understand the flow. If I pass correct value, 10 and 20, any exception? No. Result is 30 main. So when to use throw and throws? I should use throw and throws in the business logic for throwing an exception when wrong values are passed and report that exception. Then user programmer will catch the exception by using try catch. Try catch is used for catching the exception rising in the program and stopping abnormal termination, displaying error message to the user. That's it about the project on try catch and throw throws. Hope everyone understand. Throw and throws keywords, need and their rules completed. When to use throw and throws, try and catch, comma, sample, project also done. Any questions? Still, if you have, you can ask. No questions, sir? Any questions? Everyone comfortable? Now try catch, finally throw throws. All people have confidence. When to use what, how to use. Okay. Now let's go to the last topic, that is types of exceptions, their purpose and rules and their purpose. Then very, very important, checked exception rules. Checked exception rules. While discussing checked exception rules, we will learn exception chaining. Okay, comma, 2 ways of chaining exceptions. Hey, somewhere you heard the word called chaining? Constructor chaining, method chaining, like that also we have word exception chaining also. Seva batch, chain batch. Shall we start working on this? Very, very difficult. Let me try my level best. Tell me. All exceptions are divided into how many types? Error and exception. Exception again divided into 2 types. Runtime exception and direct subclasses of exception. Listen. According to Sun Microsystem, we have 3 kinds of exceptions. Number one, error type exceptions. Number two, runtime exceptions. Number three, checked exceptions. According to Sun Microsystem, we have three kinds of exception: error type exceptions, runtime exceptions, and checked exceptions. According to Amirpet, these checked exceptions are calling compile time exceptions. What? Right. Compile time, you have any exceptions? Compile time, you have compile time errors, syntax mistakes, not runtime errors. Na? So, according to Amirpet, people are saying these are checked exceptions as compile time exceptions. Be careful. Checked exceptions are not compile time exceptions. Tell me, error is a class. Runtime exception is a class. Exception is a class. Whatever you are seeing, everything is a class. But people are calling something called what? Checked exception. Or is it a class? Is a checked exception? Is it a class? No. Is a student a student? No. Hari is a student. Balaya is a student. Same way, class not found exception is a checked exception. Interrupted exception is a checked exception. Checked exception is nothing but what? A category name. It is a kind. It's a type. Is animal a animal? No. Lion is a animal. Lion type is what? Animal. So the direct subclasses of exception called what? Checked exception. Then what we call these exceptions as? The exception, okay, error and its subclasses, runtime exception and its subclasses. These are called what? Unchecked exceptions. These are unchecked exceptions. Throwable exception and its direct subclasses are called what? Checked exceptions. Why are they named as a checked and unchecked exception? Listen carefully. Who will throw these exceptions? These exceptions are thrown by JVM software? No. These are thrown by only programmer. Okay. Now, I'm trying to load the class. To load the class, a dot class file must be available. If a dot class file is not available, programmer throwing exception. Now, we are trying to ask the operating system to pass our thread for given time. If operating system unable to pass, we are checking the time and we are throwing interrupted exception. Who? Programmer. Next, now we are asking to find connecting to a file. If the file is not available, we are throwing exception. So class not found exception, interrupted exception, file not found exception, IO exception, all these exceptions are coming because of resource missing. What missing? Resource. Because of missing resource, now these exceptions will come. The resource is missed or not missed, who will verify? Programmer. Programmer is verifying and programmer is throwing. Hello, as a programmer, how can you throw? You write a statement, what? Throw new class not found exception. You are writing the statement inside where? Program. Then when you write a program, you will compile or not? Yes. Then compiler software come to know what exception you are throwing from here? Yes. So the exceptions which are throwing by programmer are background. We check one condition and we are throwing. Who is checking? Programmer. I am checking. I am checking and throwing that exception. That's why this exception is called what? Checked exception. Who is throwing this exception? Programmer. How throwing exception? By checking one condition. That's why it is called what? Checked exception. And next point, listen. When we throw these exceptions, are these exceptions are handled or not? Checked by compiler software. Okay, na? Programmer checking and throwing, and also compiler is checking those exceptions are handled or not. If the exceptions are not handled, compiler software throwing one error, compile time error. This exception is not handled. Compiler throwing one error. Because programmer is checking and throwing, because compiler is checking whether this exception is handled or not. That's why this exception is called what? Checked exception. What exceptions? Checked exception or compile time exceptions are? Checked exception, not compile time exception. Then what is the definition of checked exception? An exception whose handling is checked by compiler. If not handled, if throw error, that exception is called what? Checked exception. Then now error kind of exceptions are throwing by programmer? No. Who will throw these exception? JVM. JVM will come at what time? Compilation time or runtime? Runtime. So these exceptions are background throwing by JVM. Sometimes programmer also can throw based on the requirement, but they are meant for throwing by JVM or JVM. They are meant for throwing by the JVM, but also programmer also can throw. Tell me now, the majority of the time these exceptions are throwing by whom now? JVM. When JVM throwing exception, are those exceptions known to the compiler? That means the exception object creation statement and throwing is part of which software? JVM software, not part of compiler software. So compiler software, you don't know when these exceptions will come, because compiler unable to check these exception handling. That's why they named it as what? Unchecked exception. If at all, if the programmer has thrown these exception, will compiler software check that exception handling? No, compiler will not check the exception handling. These exceptions are meant for throwing without checking by compiler. That's why these are called what? Unchecked exception. So tell me the definition of what is checked exception and what is unchecked exception. Error and its subclasses, runtime exception and its subclasses are called unchecked exception. Throwable exception and its direct subclasses are called what? Checked exception. Second point, why they are called as unchecked and unchecked? When we throw error and its subclasses, runtime exception and its subclasses, compiler software doesn't check whether the exceptions are handled or not. That's why they're called what? Unchecked. And these exceptions are, majority of these exceptions, I don't say all, majority of these exceptions are meant for throwing by JVM. That's why these exceptions handling will not be done by compiler. Okay. Next, the exceptions which are throwing, the exceptions whose are the exceptions which are direct subclasses of exceptions are called checked exception, because these exceptions are meant for only by throwing by programmer by checking some condition. That's why those exceptions must be handled by whom? Programmer. These exceptions are throwing by whom? JVM. Then who should catch those exceptions? JVM. These exceptions are throwing by whom? Programmer. Then who should catch those exceptions? Programmer. So now it's programmer responsibility to catch this exception. If not catched by the programmer, then compiler will throw error. The exception direct subclasses are called checked exception, because these exceptions are thrown by programmer by checking one condition. Hence their exception handling is mandatory, done by the programmer. Otherwise compiler will throw error. That's why it's called what? Checked exception. So what is unchecked exception? What is checked exception? Why these are called checked exception? Why these are called unchecked exception? Got clarity? Now I'll show one small program. Can you tell me they are checked exceptions or unchecked exception by program? Look at here, a small program we'll see now. Look at here. Throw new arithmetic exception. I am writing one small program. I am writing here. I am writing a method called M1. Inside I have written what? Throw new arithmetic exception. Will you get any compile time error here? I am throwing exception. Yes or no? Yes. Did I catch that exception? Did I report that exception? Means did I handle that exception? No. If I don't handle exception, compiler will throw error. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Now, is it throwing any error? No. That means it is a checked or unchecked? Unchecked. That means the subclass of exception or runtime exception. How can I say? Look at their operator name. They're not arithmetic. If an operation name is there in the exception class name, then it is what? Runtime exception. So runtime exception direct subclasses are what? Unchecked exception. These are meant for throwing by programmer or JVM? JVM. And also should handle by whom now? JVM. Okay. If I throw these exception, will compiler must force to handle this exception? No. Because its behavior is what? Unchecked behavior. Now tell me. I'm writing throw new class not found exception. Any compile time error or no compile time error? Now we will get compile time error. Read it. Error. Unreported exception. Class not found exception must be caught or declared to be thrown. That means, is it a exception or compile time error? compile-time error. I am throwing one exception, which is a direct subclass of exception. It is comes under the type of checked exception. Then checked exception must handle. How can I handle? Either by catching or by reporting. Did I catch exception? No. Did I report exception? No. Then compiler will throw error. Hope you all understand. So tell me, what are the rules while working with checked exception? When we throw checked exception, I must handle it either by catching or by reporting. Tell me, in method M3, is there any compile time error? In method M3, is there any compile time error? I am throwing which exception? Checked, unchecked. Current topic is what? Checked, unchecked. What exception I am throwing? Check. Each checked exception, did I catch? Yes. Then any error? No. Compile successfully. Next, what is the other way of handling? Reporting. Now, I am reporting checked exception. Is there any compile time error or no? I am throwing checked exception by reporting. Any compile time error? No. So tell me, what is checked exception? What the rules on checked exception? An exception that is a direct subclass of exception is called checked exception. If I throw a checked exception, I must handle it either by catching or by reporting. Else compiler will throw error. Okay, let me make you convinced. Here, I need to convince you. Sir, why all exceptions are checked? If all exceptions are checked, definitely we will handle exception and program always terminated normally. Na? If exception is not checked by compiler, we may catch or we may not catch. Then program terminated abnormal if I don't catch. Na? Best exceptions are checked or unchecked. Checked exceptions are best because you are forced to catch it. Program terminated normally. All the previous results will be saved. If exception is an unchecked exception, it is not forcing us to handle it. I mean, catch that exception and program may terminate abnormally. Yes or no? If all exceptions are checked exception, is it a good or not? Yes. Array, try to understand. If it is a regular classes are what? Regular classes. Then should I tell you every day time? 11 to 1. Tomorrow class time is 11 to 1. Every day should I inform you the class time? No. That is mandatory or optional actually? Actually, mandatory. Should I inform you daily? Not required. Why? Because it's a daily class. I no need to inform you. If I start the class late, any problem? Any problem? No problem. If I start class late, any problem? No problem. Then what will you do with that half an hour or 1 hour? You study yourself. You are taking care of yourself. Either sleeping or talking or something. Now the class is Sunday class. Extra class. If I don't inform you that I am coming late, you will get angry. Later after I come, you will murder me? Yes, sir, I know. With your eyes. Why? If Sunday, if I don't take class, you can do your personal work now. Regular class, you are here only for attending the class. Your mind is not fixed with any other resources, other works. Okay, you are only targeted with what? My class only. Fixed with my class. Sunday, you are busy with what? Other works. By sacrificing the other works, you are coming to my class. If I tell you, if I start the class late, if I don't inform you the problem coming, then tell me, you will get angry because your work is disturbed. Tell me, if I am coming late, I should inform you before only that today class time is changed. It will be half an hour late. So that you will also start half an hour late from your home. Are you catching my point? There are some works must be informed. There are some works, even though not informed, not a problem. That problem can be recovered. There are some problems cannot be recovered. There are some problems can be recovered. There are some problems, some damage happen, but not a much damage you can ignore. So tell me, if I come to the regular class half an hour late, damage happened, but that is a negligence. You can ignore it. If Sunday class, if I am coming late, there is a huge damage happened to your sleep time. Na? If Sunday class is not there, you will continue with sleeping happily, right? Or you can plan some other works, right? If I take a class and coming late or cancel the class. After half an hour to 1 hour time completed, then I cancel the class. But that time I can understand your feelings. Okay. Next, let me take another example. You take our outside road, our building outside road. There are so many damages are there in the road now. Up and downs are there. Is there any board on that road saying that road got damaged, go safely? No. Why? If you fell down, also there is no problem happen. You will not die. If the board is not properly there, when you are going on the road, after 2 minutes walking, you realize, array, there is a road damage. I should go slowly, carefully. That means the initial damage happened to you. Is it any much problem coming to your body? No. Then you realize the problem and started handling by yourself, catching the by yourself. Are you following? Yes. Now you are traveling on a highway road. There is a big road damage was there. On highway road, at what speed you will go? At the speed of 10-20 kilometers? At 120, 140 kilometers, 150 kilometers you are going. Right? Then when the big damage there on the road, if there is no proper board, diversion board is not there, then next Janma. Yes or no? Once the car got, started faulty, then can you catch yourself? No. Can you handle yourself? No. If a seat belt is there? Okay. If airbags are there in the car? Okay. And some body parts are damaged and we can save. Tell me that if seat belt and what you call airbags are what? Try catch. They are actual try catch or backup catch block? Backup catch block. Original catch block is not there. What is the original catch block? Throws. If throws is there properly, what the original catch block? Brake. Brake is the original catch block. So when I see the board there, immediately here I decrease the speed by apply the brake. Then backup catch block, seat belt and airbags required to use or not required? Not required. Now are you safe or not? Yes. So some exceptions are optional to handle when there is no big damage to our program. Even though program terminated abnormally, there is no big damage. We can restart the program and we can pass correct values. When there is a big damage to our program, we must there is a big damage to the program and the end user cannot solve that problem by changing the input. For example, database interaction I am doing. Database connections are not properly given to the program. Program terminated abnormally. Then the end user solve that problem. Then programmer only can solve the problem. The previously entered all values, data collected from the different bank accounts, everything will be lost now. Are catching my point? So what type of exceptions must catch and should create as a what do you call a checked exception? The exceptions which are dealing with external process of our application, like a .class file, like files, and like what a database, network connections. These kind of exceptions we must handle them compulsory, mandatorily. At a compilation time only we should take care all the resources are there or not. For that purpose, the exceptions must be what type of exceptions? Checked exception. If you forgot to handle, compiler, throw error and remind, then we'll write proper try catch and throws keyword. And also look at the resources are there or not. After everything is setup completed, then only we are giving project to end user. When we give project to end user, what we did, we proper try catches everything we written. Then when I give the project to the end user running. Now he deducted money from first account, second account, third account, and he has to add that amount to our database. After all money deducted, now the database connections are failed. Then is there any chance the previous money is losing now? No. Why? You have written try catch now. When exception rise, the control will go to catch block. In the catch block, that entire money you are return back to the original accounts. Hello, I'll catch my point. If the database connections exception is an unchecked exception, then compiler will throw error to handle that exception? No. Will write try catch? No. At runtime, if the database connections are failed, the entire money is lost. So what type of exceptions I have to take it as an unchecked exception? The exceptions which are dealing with end user problems, end user input problems can be unchecked exception, because he is giving wrong value, execution failed, then he will restart by giving what? Correct value. Are you catching my point? The exceptions which are dealing with external resources, which are using background in the project, and those connections are created by programmer, only by programmer involvement can be solved. Those exceptions must be what? Checked exceptions. Hope you all understand. If you create your exception as a checked exception, then what is the rule on checked exception? You must handle it either by reporting or by catch. So this is a very, very important knowledge. Hope you got some idea. Okay, right. Please write down these points, notes. It's not there properly in the material. Look at this. Object is a superclass of all class. It is a throwable. Have two types: error, exception. Error type exceptions are throwing by whom? JVM or programmer. Runtime exceptions also throwing by JVM or programmer. And exception direct subclasses are called what? Checked exception. These are only thrown by programmer. So when runtime errors will come, exceptions will come because of lack of memory, operator failure, wrong inputs, wrong logic, and missing resources. Now lack of memory is throwing by whom now? JVM. Operator failure, wrong inputs, wrong logic, or resources missing is also throwing by API programmer. API programmer will throw. Understand? Operator failure also throwing by whom now? JVM. Clear my point? So totally what are the reasons behind runtime exceptions will come? These five. Lack of memory problems are addressed by error type exceptions. Operator failure, wrong inputs, wrong logic. These three problems are addressed by runtime exceptions. And missing resources problems are addressed by checked exceptions. These are first slide. Next. What kind of exceptions? Java supports two types of exceptions, checked and unchecked. When we throw an exception, if compiler checking this exception handling, if you don't handle this exception either by reporting or by catching, if you get compile time error, we will call that exception as checked. When we throw an exception, if compiler is not checking this exception handling, if you don't get any error, then we'll get what? We'll call this as what? Unchecked exception. When you find serious or huge data loss, when we are accessing outside resources, when we find serious problems occurred or huge data losses occurred, or when we are accessing outside resources like .class file, database, network connection, in this situation, we must create an exception as checked exception. When we are finding data loss will be there, but we can ignore the data loss, not accessing outside resources, only internal resources only. In that situation, we must create an exception as unchecked exception. What is checked? What is unchecked? When you create exception as checked and unchecked. Okay. How compiler software knows which is checked exception and which is unchecked exception? How compiler software know line is a animal? How compiler software know student is a person? By type operator instance of only na. Compiler software internally contains one condition. When you write throw new arithmetic exception in your program, compiler software will take this arithmetic exception class name. It itself will create one object background. Compiler is also one software, no? It is a parsing top to bottom, reading each line and take that class name out and creates object. So how compiler software can create object of our class? End of object oriented programming you will learn. Okay. Now this object is created by using reflection API and verify its type with what? Instance of operator. If E not instance of error or if E not instance of runtime exception, then that exception is checked or unchecked. If E not instance of error, if E not instance of runtime exception, that exception is checked or unchecked. Checked exception. Then compiler verifies whether this exception is handled by using by using throws or try catch. It will verify it. If not there, then compiler throwing error. When we throw an exception, if it's handling checked by compiler, we don't handle it. If same point. Okay. The error, runtime exception, and their subclasses are unchecked exception. The remaining all exception, throwable exception, and their direct subclasses are called what? Checked exception. So totally how many slides you need to understand? 3. Number 1, all the types of exceptions we throwing, and then following by when with the respective exceptions will come, and then following by how many types of exception, their point, when to choose exception as a checked and when to choose exception as a unchecked, how compiler can decide which exception is checked. I will ask a question. Tell me the differences between error and exception. Tell me the difference between runtime exception and checked exception. So final point. Tell me the differences between checked and unchecked exception. So these are all the slides you have to remember. I will share all these slides. If you start writing notes, it will take 1 hour. Okay, I'll share these all the slides to our Google Classroom. Not today, tomorrow. After tomorrow class completed, I will share. Okay, if I share now, no, I'll not forget. Okay, I'll share these slides in. Yeah, I'll share. Right. So I'll share these slides in the tomorrow class. Okay, after class completed, because if I to miss this slide, I should not say it, because there are again 2 types of checked exceptions are there: partially checked and fully checked. After completing that explanation, I will share it. Clear? Right. Hope you understand today the theory point of checked and unchecked. You are going out now. Steps are there. You have to go safely now. Is there any board? Slowly go. No. Then you have to take care of yourself and go nicely, na? While talking with your friend or mobile, if you taken wrong step, then what happened? Rolling to the ground floor, no? Damage happened to your body, na? Big damage or small damage? That's why it is what? Checked exception, unchecked exception. Unchecked exception. Tell me, outside there is a barricade. I mean, the balcony has a one iron rod, iron support, right? If you remove it, if you go from there directly land to the ground floor, from there up floor, right? Tell me that safety, that iron rod is what? Checked exception. Nothing but try catch. Are you following my point? So start apply checked exception and unchecked exception. Both are required in the project. Sometimes I should ignore catching exception. Sometimes I should take it mandatory. That's why 2 types of exceptions are there. Thank you. That's all for today class. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow? Holiday na? Why? Why tomorrow holiday? Republic Day. Not to you, to India, Republic Day.
Some exception by throws zero. We can handle some exception by throws zero.